Basically infatuated with the in-between, the ups, the downs, the curves and the rounds. I bring it to your city or your hometown. I go back in time when the feeling was fine, when funkin' was legal and it wasn't a crime. Party people lined up and down the way, a bigger celebration than your birthday. Funkin' up the neighborhood, I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. And I have seen the world pristine, funk you up in the bushes, funk you down in the trees. Now look around, all the frowns, the yellow, the white, the red and the brown. Now keep in mind, it never costs a dime, 'cause funkin' is free, I remember the time. Now look today, the streets are gray, time to take it back to yesterday. Funkin' up the neighborhood, I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt the fool 'cause the funkin' was good. It was good in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood, I felt full 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood, funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full 'cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood.
And we're live! Welcome to the Order of the Pipe. And I'm West, I'll be your host. This is actually our first time going live on this channel. And man, I am honored, just honored, to have one of the godfathers of the YTPC. He might disagree with that, I totally won't. Dr. Alan Harrelson of the Pipe Cottage. Thank you for joining us, Alan.
It's a pleasure to be here, West. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Can I call you Alan? Should I call you Dr. Harrelson?
Yes. No, Alan is fine. I simply reserve Dr. Harrelson for students that I have been blessed to have, so Alan is fine.
Oh, that is great. Students, what do you teach?
I teach American history. I am a professor of history, and I teach primarily graduate students now. I have
Hmm.
PhD students. I'm directing dissertations, and I teach a little bit of undergrad, but primarily graduate students.
Wow. I would expect nothing less from you, honestly. From watching your content on YouTube, it's incredible. You've been a big hero of mine for a long time, so so happy to have you on. So tell me, you're not smoking a pipe tonight because you just moved. I guess you don't have the normal pipe cottage outdoor to smoke in. How did that? How'd the whole move go to Kentucky?
The move was very stressful. Today's real estate market is very difficult. We wanted more land. We wanted to be in a place that was more removed from industrial development.
Hmm.
And so I looked at several states, and Kentucky fit the bill.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it was really a thing of divine intervention. Kentucky is essentially the new face of the old South, as a friend of mine likes to say.
Ah, okay.
And South Carolina is where I was born and raised, but Kentucky is where we now call home.
Hmm.
And we've been on this farm for about 2 months now. And so there's still a lot of learning left to do, a lot of work that we have to do on this place, but we're blessed to have it. And thank God the move is over.
No kidding. Yeah, they say moving is one of the most stressful things you'll ever do in your life, and I totally believe it.
It is, and I didn't move here because I wanted the pipe cottage business to be in a different state. I moved here because of entirely different reasons. And it was my goal to bring the pipe cottage with me.
Hmm.
But that's been a little more difficult than what I had originally imagined.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's so. Tell us a little bit about that. What was the deal with that?
Well, we have different laws in Kentucky compared to what we had in South Carolina. And there is a great deal of debate as to whether Kentucky is a southern state or otherwise. I tend to believe that it is primarily southern in its history and its political viewpoint. But the people who direct the tobacco licensing department in the Kentucky government are not favorable. They're not favorable to my interest and my outlook on things. I made a video about this a few days ago,
Hmm.
but I'll just briefly explain here that the state of Kentucky requires a lot of regulation for people who are selling tobacco out of state. And yes, they require me to give them the names of everybody we have sold to in the past. Everybody, regardless as to whether they're in Kentucky or not. And the whole experience was unfortunate. I have not had any rude encounter with anybody in Kentucky since we moved here until I had to talk to the government.
Hmm.
When I had to talk to the supervisor of the tobacco licensing department, whatever they call that thing, I don't know what it's called. I talked to the supervisor of that agency, and it was an unpleasant experience. I could tell from the initial emails I received from her that this was not a person I was going to enjoy spending time with. And so rather than continuing an email correspondence, I called this
Hmm.
individual. I'm not going to mention names for obvious reasons.
Right.
And it was contentious from the beginning. Contentious from the beginning. Wasn't able to answer any of the questions I had about what was going to happen to the information about my customer base. And that violated my sense of integrity, business integrity.
Absolutely.
And I told her that I will probably not open a business in Kentucky in that case, because I'm just simply not going to violate that sense of integrity. It's important for people to realize, if anybody even cares about the Pipe Cottage, it's important for them to realize that I do not have a desire to be in business simply to make a lot of money. The Pipe Cottage did well during the several months that it was open. We opened it in August of last year. I closed it down in late March while we were going through the process of moving.
And that's just the
It
e-com site.
excelled. Yes, just the e-com site. There was never a brick and mortar. It has been my dream from the beginning to have a brick and mortar. The purpose of the e-com material is to serve as a vehicle to get to the brick and mortar location, to see how much we can sell online, because unfortunately, if you have a brick and mortar that's in a rural location in this country, you have to rely to a certain extent on online sales.
Absolutely.
You can't simply sell to the people who come into the store. You have, and there are, I would venture to assert that most anybody who owns a brick and mortar store would agree with that. And so for the time being, the dream that I developed in South Carolina has been placed on hold by the government of the state of Kentucky. And so that's where we are.
Yeah. So they actually asked for historic data. They wanted data on all of your customers going back to the beginning of your business, even in South Carolina.
Yes.
What do those
Well,
customers have to do with doing business in Kentucky today?
They don't. I asked in an email with this person. I said, what kind of customer information are you looking for? And so she sent me a link to a Kentucky government website that required us to list a massive amount of information about these individuals, including the type of materials that they purchased. And I told her, I made it very clear. I said, we were in business in South Carolina operating under a South Carolina tobacco license. And she said, well, you've had customers in the past. That's what you put down on your application for a license. She never told me to specifically put Kentucky customers. And we had customers all over the country. Kentucky was not even an important part of our customer base at that time. Most of our customers were in other states. And so I began to have a conversation with this person, and she evidently understood that I wasn't in favor of the high taxes that Kentucky has on tobacco products. And she proceeded to threaten me, to intimidate. She threatened an audit of my entire business. And,
even though you haven't actually started yet.
No. That was not called for. That was extremely uncalled for. But that's what we have to expect with government people now.
Absolutely.
Regardless, I can talk about several different industries that are being run in the ground because of government regulation. If you wanted to just stick with tobacco farming, the agricultural part of our hobby has been regulated it's almost been plowed under. I'll use that metaphor. It's almost been plowed under because of government regulation. And up until 2004, most tobacco farmers, actually probably all tobacco farmers, sold their leaf at local tobacco auctions. You had auction houses. Where I lived in South Carolina, my grandfather was a tobacco farmer, and there are many families across the South who have memories of these tobacco auctions and how important they were to the local community and the local farming atmosphere. But in 2004, in an effort led primarily by Mitch McConnell from Kentucky,
Right.
the federal government did away with those, essentially the ability of tobacco farmers to experience those auctions, to sell in those auctions, and in a nutshell, required tobacco farmers to sign a contract with large tobacco companies to sell their tobacco.
Wow.
So they lost a lot of control over the price of the leaf. Philip Morris now buys well over 50% of American produced tobacco. Now, of course, this is dealing primarily with cigarettes, but unfortunately, the government does not make a distinction between cigarettes and the pipe and cigar industry. They are not the same thing. Premium tobacco, the premium tobacco industry, pipes and cigars, should never be treated the same as the cigarette industry. I have never smoked cigarettes. I've known a lot of people who do smoke cigarettes. If they want to do that, that's fine, but that's not my forte. But the government, by trying to regulate all tobacco products in this way, is essentially putting the pipe industry in a very difficult situation. So I'm going to stop there. I could prattle on, but I'll let you speak for me.
I have questions every step of the way. So, do you feel like the pushback you got from the Kentucky state government official, do you think this had anything to do with the general sort of war on tobacco that's happening right now? We're seeing a very similar things happen with YouTube. A lot of, tobacco, pipe cigar channels are being just shadow banned and blocked completely. People aren't getting notifications. Videos aren't being distributed the way they had been. There's just, it seems to be this cultural, almost, like I said, war on tobacco that's happening right now, regardless of if it's like cigarettes versus premium tobaccos.
Yes. Rick Newcomb from California, he has written several good books on pipe smoking, the culture and the history and the industry of pipe smoking. And he calls this tobacco prohibition. He compares it to the alcohol prohibition of the early 20th century. And that's exactly right. There is a taboo now. Using tobacco in any form is considered to be a negative aspect of American culture today, which is sort of ironic because we can have many conversations about legalizing marijuana. We can have we have no legislation against pornography, which I would argue both of those things have ruined the lives and the marriages of far more people than any tobacco has ever thought of.
You're absolutely right.
But what tobacco has been a part of this country's history for ever since the period of settlement and colonization.
Right.
It's complete nonsense. It's nonsense, this war on tobacco. If somebody wants to smoke tobacco, they should have the freedom to do it. But let's talk about freedom and liberty for just a minute. There has been some pushback on my YouTube channel about my disdain towards marijuana. Why don't I promote that while promoting pipe tobacco? Why do I consider them to be two different things? American liberty does not mean that you have the liberty to simply sit on the couch and smoke weed all day. I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. But liberty is there so that willing to take risks can build, create, fabricate a life for themselves that's good for their family, good for their income. American liberty, in the times in this country where we had economic freedom, we have very little economic freedom now, even though we call ourselves a laissez-faire capitalist country. During the periods of American history where the economy was at its best, people were building small businesses. They were building farms. They were not regulated with the products that they wanted to sell to the consumer. It works. Capitalism works. Too much regulation from the government is killing American small business. It is literally killing it. It's making people not even want to be in business anymore. It's discouraging people from wanting to start new enterprises, to be entrepreneurs. When I learned the many different regulations that we would have to abide by if we opened a pipe shop in Kentucky, that was immensely discouraging. Immensely discouraging. I should not be in a position in the United States of America where I have to ask permission of any government or any individual if I want to start a business. Because the people who are going to ruin their lives are going to ruin their lives regardless as to whether the government intervenes or not. The government's not going to be able to stop stupid people from being stupid.
Right, exactly.
But the government is stopping intelligent entrepreneurs, people who are willing to work, willing to take risks from excelling in the economy.
Right, absolutely.
That's what I have a problem with. That's what I have a problem with, and that never really was an issue in my life until we moved to Kentucky. So I'm rather aggravated about it.
I can tell, no kidding. So, man, I could talk forever on any one of those points you just made. America was founded in part because of the tobacco industry. It was founded by entrepreneurs. It was founded by people who wanted to build something without asking permission. Again, we could talk forever about that. I try not to get into politics too much because, unfortunately, in today's world, you're going to alienate at least half the potential audience. But you're absolutely right every step of the way. One of my questions was thepipecottage.com is still up, and it seems like I can still add things to the shopping cart. Is it still active? Can I still buy things from your website?
No.
The e-com functionality is turned off?
The website is there, but the business has been shut down.
Okay.
Because we've moved to Kentucky, I cannot legally sell anything through that website without a license from the state of Kentucky.
So that was my next question, though. No, go ahead, please. I didn't interrupt.
So I am not willing to give the government what they want to open that business in Kentucky. So I'm looking at Tennessee, which is only 5 miles from my farm.
Give Tennessee those tax dollars. Absolutely. That's fine. So you would build your business across state lines. You live in Kentucky, you do business in Tennessee. So you wouldn't have to worry about a Kentucky business license at all in this case.
No, if I went to Tennessee and opened up a business there, I would be operating under a Tennessee retail tobacco license,
that's perfect.
Is far easier to obtain than a tobacco license in the state of Kentucky, which is sort of unusual because Kentucky has, for a long time, been a preeminent burley tobacco state. 99% of the burley tobacco grown in this country is grown in Appalachia.
Yeah.
And Kentucky is a huge part of that. In South Carolina, where I'm from, they did not grow burley tobacco. They grew Virginia brightleaf tobacco. And that's what's grown in North Carolina and in the state of Virginia. But Kentucky has been extremely important for the burley tobacco industry. And we failed to remember how many people went out of business with the tobacco buyout of 2004. There were far, far more tobacco farmers in the United States prior to 2004 than what there are now. In 1950, there were well over 500,000 tobacco farmers in this country. By the time we get to the year 2005, 2010, and there's less than 50,000 farmers who are planting and growing tobacco in the United States.
Wow.
So the farms have grown bigger, but the number of tobacco farmers has decreased. And the government doesn't understand how regulation impacts tradition, heritage, the family lifestyle of a particular family on a particular piece of land.
Right.
All around the state of Kentucky now, there are abandoned tobacco farms, abandoned merely 15, 20 years ago. And it's not been that long in the history of the state when tobacco farming declined. Actually, I just ordered some firewood to be sent to my farm. I had a fella from Casey County, Kentucky, came down here and delivered some firewood to me. Some firewood. I've been talking too much. I'm losing my focus. He delivered some firewood to me yesterday, and the firewood was seasoned in an abandoned tobacco barn.
Oh wow, that is cool.
So rather than growing tobacco on this place, now they're having to cut firewood, season it in this tobacco barn, and that's how they're making a living now.
What a shame.
Because the government can't keep its hands off of American agriculture, American small business, any kind of industry or business that should be succeeding. It's not happening right now because the government has a foot on the neck of people who are the real movers and shakers of the American economy.
That is absolutely true. I actually saw a meme today that I stopped and I had to think about this, and it's 100% accurate. The meme said the U.S. government is a corporation that has zero incentive to provide goods and services that are promised. Which is absolutely true. They do what they want. They bring in their income at gunpoint, essentially, with threat of prison and confiscation of all your goods. They have no incentive to actually make small business work because they're getting too many payoffs from larger companies like Philip Morris, who, as you said, are buying up all the tobacco.
Yes, and it's not simply the U.S. federal government. It is also state and local governments. It's the state government of Kentucky that I'm dealing with. And if we wanted to talk about, the tobacco farming, yes, you have to deal with the federal government to a large extent. But to simply open a business, I never expected this in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky is a very conservative state. If you just cut off Louisville in the urban areas, the rest of the state is overwhelmingly conservative. So I know what you're saying about not wanting to talk about politics. You're going to alienate half the people, but I'm at the point now where I really do not care.
No.
If I'm going to alienate people on my channel or whatever, I mean, who cares? I mean, it's a YouTube channel. It has nothing to do with my livelihood. It has nothing to do with who I am and how I identify myself. The time has passed for people to play things safe. Now we're in a position in this country where if we are not willing to take some serious risks, fill in the blank with whatever those risks are, however you desire. If we're not willing to take some risks, then we will in fact lose what's left of this country, and that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and look, I wasn't asking you not to talk about politics. I was saying on my other channel, we actually make an effort not to, but you're right. In this specific instance, you can't not talk about politics. And you're totally right about state versus federal in this case. And in fact, that brings me to a question brought by Blue Piper. He asked, is Tennessee going to be able to work with you on starting this business? Also, do you have a time frame of when your new store might open?
Well, it won't happen this year. I seriously doubt it'll happen this year because you have to remember, if I open a store in Tennessee, it has to have a brick and mortar location. I can have my residence in Kentucky. My private residence can remain in Kentucky. But in order to open a business in Tennessee, it would have to have a retail location. That's going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. And I'm not going to open a brick and mortar store until it's right. It's going to be stocked with enough inventory to supply people. I want to have a lot of variety of inventory. I don't want to simply have 2 or 3 pipes sitting up there. I want it to be a bona fide pipe shop, pipe-centric.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's going to, I did not plan on opening a brick and mortar that soon. Now, before we left South Carolina, we were in a position before we shut the store down in March to open a brick and mortar store in South Carolina this fall, 2022. That was the plan from the beginning. But because of a lot of different reasons, mostly spiritual, we were convinced, my wife and I, that we needed to move. And so that's the primary emphasis of our marriage, of our life right now. We are simply following the leading of the Lord in a lot of different things. And I wanted to reopen the Pipe Cottage in Kentucky. I wanted to stay a part of the tobacco business. But that may not happen, but that's okay. I will look in, I've started looking to look into Tennessee real estate. And so my hope is to have a brick and mortar Pipe Cottage store open during the first half of next year. So if I had to put a time frame on it, that's what I would say.
Okay.
But what I want people to know is that we just went. There are people who have asked me, and I know are interested in purchasing from us and who support our business. We developed a very powerful customer base during the short amount of time that we were open. And so I want to speak to some of those people now for just a second, as well as anybody else who may be interested in purchasing from us in the future. We just went through a major stressful time in our life, moving from South Carolina to Kentucky, and that process took about 3 months. And we are finally to the point now where we're settled. Things in our life is finally settling down to where we can focus on different things. But now that I'm focused on the Pipe Cottage, it is going to take some time to get it up and going, because when you are looking to purchase real estate for a commercial purpose, that takes money. The inventory takes money, and so I've got some legal issues I'm going to have to deal with. I'm going to have to deal with an attorney in Tennessee to figure out exactly how to do all this properly. So at the end of the day, it is still my plan to open a brick and mortar pipe store, and I hope to get it done during the first half of next year, because I believe in the importance of these types of stores for our community. You can only do so much online. The most special times that I have had when purchasing pipes, when purchasing tobacco, comes from those occasions, those very special occasions, when I'm able to visit pipe makers and tobacconists and go to them, talk to them in person, purchase from them in their store. We can still do that in this country if we can figure a way to get the government out of the way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start having some conversations with people, if they'll talk to me. I mean, the good thing about the pipe industry is that there's not the same type and degree of competition that you have in other industries.
Right.
I can easily call someone who has a successful pipe and tobacco business in another part of the country, and I guarantee you they'll sit down and talk to me. And they will enjoy the conversation for the most part. Now, there may be an exception, I'm sure, but for the most part, pipe smokers are complete gentlemen. And and so that's one thing I want to do, is kind of get some insight from people who have done what I'm trying to do, and perhaps learn from their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've felt a similar personality type is drawn to pipes as say craft beers, right? So like in the craft brew industry, there should be a lot of competition. You know, everybody and the brother has a small craft brewery right now, so they should be fighting for that shelf space and that market share. But instead, you find them collaborating more often than not. They want to sit down with each other and learn from each other and teach each other. And you see the same thing in this community. You're right; they're just genuinely good people in this community, which is why I love hanging out and learning from you guys. So I do have a question about your e-com business, though. So you said you can't start the business while you're located in Kentucky, but when you were in South Carolina, you could still sell to people in other states. Now, did you have to still adhere to those laws in other states, even though you were selling from South Carolina? Did the fact that you were selling online sort of negate the need to follow those same regulations in other states?
Well, the law we were operating under was South Carolina tobacco laws. We sold to other states. You've got to remember that even though the country is large, we still have 50 different state governments that we have to deal with. And each state has a somewhat different perspective and a different viewpoint on tobacco. There were several states that we told customers point blank we could not sell to: Utah, Washington, a few others. And the same thing is same thing is happening with other pipe shops who are selling online. There are certain states where you cannot sell tobacco to them because of state law. So the only other question that comes up is, how much money do you have to give to the state government when you sell to customers in other states? That's the main thing that the state governments are interested in. Are they getting their tax money?
Right, and that's what it comes down to.
We required customers to pay sales tax based upon the tobacco tax laws in their individual states. And we used a computer program that calculated all of that for us. And so so when a customer from a different state other than South Carolina, or even in South Carolina, would buy from us, before they check out, they're told how much they're supposed to pay in sales tax. If you buy from Smoking Pipes, tobaccopipes.com, anywhere else, the same thing. We had the same type of program that they use. So but you've got to realize that certain laws and certain tax formats do not apply to small businesses until you reach a certain threshold.
Right.
For instance, if you are if you're a retailer selling a particular product online from one state to another, you are not required to pay certain taxes until you reach a certain threshold, such as maybe $500,000 in sales in that particular state. So it's complicated. It's complicated owning and operating an online business from one state, selling to people across the country. And it's even more complicated when you're dealing with tobacco.
Absolutely. Well, the reason I ask, though, is because could you, until you get to the point where you're ready to open your B&M, could you potentially operate your e-com site out of Tennessee so you could still sell across the country? No?
No, you can't do that. Because the state of Tennessee will not grant a retail license unless you have a physical location. And they would have no reason to do that. I mean, there's no, and I understand where they're coming from. There's no reason to have a licensing in Tennessee unless I had a physical location.
Fair point.
It would probably be great if I could, but no, sir, that's not a problem.
My brain always tries to look for these loopholes, so I had to ask. So, are you considering any legal action against the state of Kentucky?
I don't know what good it would do. They have their laws. If I had my way about it, I would definitely be doing far more than pursuing legal action.
Right.
I would be trying to get some. I would try to make sure that the people who I talked to had a good talking to from their supervisors. But there is a stigma against tobacco use overall in the United States now, and probably worldwide. So there's no public outcry in support of the tobacco industry. I don't know what kind of support one would have, although there is a great deal of public support now in favor of small businesses and reducing regulation.
Yeah.
So it's not in my interest. It's not in the best interest of my ambitions for the Pipe Cottage to file a lawsuit. That would be too time consuming, too much stress on my family, and it would not accomplish anything. I firmly believe that it would not accomplish anything.
Right, just spinning those wheels never goes anywhere. So, I was actually surprised to learn about a bill that almost passed a couple of years ago that would have potentially raised the cost of a tin of tobacco to like $50, like to the same level it is in some European countries. Do you know more details about that?
That was last year, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay.
The United States Congress has toyed with the idea of raising taxes, federal taxes on tobacco for decades now, several years. This has been several bills have been introduced to the Congress, but last year it came close because the Democrats have a pretty good hold on the Congress now, and of course you have a Democrat president. And but if it were not for the cigar lobbyists, the cigar industry, that
Mm-hmm.
bill probably would have passed. And unfortunately, in that bill, they lumped cigarette, cigars, and pipe tobacco all in the same boat, in the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. And so, yes, indeed, the price of pipe tobacco per 10 would have been close to $50, if not more than $50, if that bill had passed the Congress. It certainly would have been signed by Biden,
Mm-hmm.
but thank God that didn't happen. But it can happen again. It's going to happen at some point. At some point, if the federal government has its way, the price of tin tobacco is going to go up to astronomical prices, and it will be extremely difficult for the average American to either enter the hobby or continue the hobby. Just talk to many people around the
Mm-hmm.
world, in Australia, New Zealand, Britain, in many European countries, in South America. It doesn't matter. I mean, we are still in a position where we can still buy a good tin of tobacco for $10 to $20.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to lose that privilege. Just because everybody else in the world is paying $50 for a tin of tobacco doesn't mean that in the United States we should ever be required to do that. This is still the United States. We still have a constitution. We still abide by the rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the country is divided right now, and there are many good reasons for that. There's no point in pursuing unity with those who want to destroy your worldview and your way of life. That's all I'll say about that.
Look, I'm with you. You can't make friends with somebody who wants you dead. But it's unbelievable that this could potentially cost $50 in the future. That blows my
Yes.
mind. And do you believe that? So, look, the only way to change laws or to maintain, the good laws or the status of the good laws, is by voting. Do you believe that things like tobacco do follow those same party lines? Or do you think that regardless of who's in office, we're still in danger of losing this hobby?
I think that there is a strong difference between liberals and conservatives on the political spectrum regarding any topic you want to talk about. Thomas Sowell wrote a book years ago entitled A Conflict of Visions. He's one of the preeminent economic thinkers in American history. And I was raised with a father who required me to read Thomas Sowell. As a teenager, I was homeschooled, and so Thomas Sowell's writings were a part of the curriculum. And Sowell argued essentially that you have two diametrically opposed visions of what America is supposed to be. You've got one side that is concentrated on achievement and success, regardless as to whether you're talking about the economy or whether you're looking at historical topics,
Mm-hmm.
or what have you. On the other side, you have a group of people who are capitalizing upon victimhood. They constantly point their finger at somebody else to blame for the problems that they have created in their own life. And so if you want to understand the very serious differences between left and right in the United States now, read Thomas Sowell. Read Russell Kirk from Mecosta, Michigan. I could talk about that all night, but to get more to your point, there is a stigma across the spectrum against tobacco in the United States.
Right.
The question is, which side thinks that it's appropriate for the government to intervene? A traditional conservative, and now these terms, we throw them around and they mean very little now. In the early 19th century, the term conservative means entirely something different than what it means today. So I'll use these terms in a way that most people probably recognize them now in the political situation that we have. So conservatives are not prone to say It's the government's job to regulate tobacco. It's the government's job to regulate anything that is succeeding in the economy in the private sector, with the
Right.
private sector maintaining control of it. On the left-hand side of the spectrum, you have people who want the government to dictate how we live, how we think, how we behave, how we interact with each other as human beings. It is a matter of control. We want the government to control this. Conservatives, for the most part, do not think that it's the government's job to control the economy.
Right. You're right.
So yes, I think it does matter who is in office. And even though many conservatives supported the buyout of 2004, including Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, that who knows how more difficult that bill would have been had the liberal side of the country had total control during that time.
Oh, this would be a completely different conversation right now. We might not even be having this conversation right now, frankly. So what you're saying, it kind of leans towards libertarianism a little bit more than even conservatism. Do you believe that there would be a slightly better chance for the tobacco industry in the future if the country went more libertarian, even versus conservative, Republican?
No, I am not a libertarian. And I would encourage people to read Russell Kirk's essay entitled "Why I Am Not a Libertarian." I have known several people affiliated with the Ludwig von Mises Institute out of Auburn, Alabama. They are essentially a think tank for libertarianism in this country. And actually, I got an email from a libertarian TV show broadcaster who wanted to do an interview. And I told him, I said, well, I'm not necessarily libertarian, but I'm not a Republican Party conservative either. If I had to tell people what I am, I would say I'm a Southern agrarian.
Yeah.
Southern agrarian means far more to me than these conservative liberal nomenclature. The problem with libertarianism is that it doesn't have a sufficient degree of respect for historical precedent. I've had libertarians tell me that, well, there should be no government. We should have no state lines. There should be no demarcation between one country and another. And many libertarians, at the end of the day, the ultimate rendition of it is anarchy.
Well, I was going to say that almost goes towards anarchism rather than even.
Yes,
right.
It does. But no. Where I was born and raised in South Carolina, when I say conservative, if I'm going to use that term at all, we have to ask ourselves, what are we conserving? What is it that we want to preserve for the future? And there is a particular history, a culture in South Carolina that should be preserved, that should be respected. And the same would go for any other state, any other region in this country, or any other country around the world. The only way that a culture successfully perpetuates itself from one generation to the next is it successfully defends itself against other cultures that are opposed to it.
Okay.
And so you can't just have a free-for-all where you have no government structure at all.
Right. I
don't believe that. I believe government is necessary for defense purposes and to take stupid people off the street. there are certain limited reasons for government. But self-government, which is what we are supposed to have in this country, which was the vision of the founders, has been obliterated in recent decades. And so now we are in a situation where we have to figure out how to make a living, how to support our families within the context, the framework of regulation and government structure that we have been given by Washington and our state government. It's not supposed to be like that.
You're right.
So
You're right.
that I do agree with I do agree with libertarians in the sense that government should be limited. I do not agree with libertarians on much anything else.
Right. Sometimes that spectrum goes a little too far in one direction, right? So, yeah, aside
Yeah.
from just the big the big voting events, president, state representatives, what can the average pipe smoker do? What can the average premium tobacco enthusiast do to preserve what we have?
Buy more tobacco. Buy more pipes.
Mm-hmm. So,
If you want the industry to stay, if you want the industry to stay around, you have to do your part to help the industry maintain its status as an industry.
mm-hmm.
Buy things. Don't simply buy from the large Walmart
Right.
online stores.
Yeah.
We won't name names, but there are 2 or 3 really, really big online pipe tobacco companies in this country. Don't just give money to these people. Support the local guy. Buy some tobacco online from a brick and mortar owner in another part of the country that you may not live around that part of the country, but support them. I mean, I can list several brick and mortar stores around the United States that I buy material from, not simply because I need another pipe or I need another tobacco, it's because I want to do my part to support them economically.
Right.
Because if the pipe stores don't have money to continue, then what are we talking about? And so the regulations are, of course, different from one state to the next. We're going to find a way to get around the situation that we are in. But there are successful brick and mortar stores that are already up and running around the country. Buy from them. Just so that's what I would say. Money talks. Money talks.
Right.
It's the money that's speaking to the representatives. It's because the cigar industry is so economically profitable for several places around the United States, for several business people. It's because of the profitability of the cigar industry that the cigar people are able to lobby Washington and have their voice heard.
Right. It goes back to the idea of voting with your wallet.
Yes. So I would simply say, you fight fire with fire. Put your money where your mouth is and buy more pipes, and by God, buy more tobacco. Fill those cellars.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny, going between the idea of stocking up and politics. There's a user who calls himself Ron Paul 2012, who says that he's bought enough tobacco to last him a lifetime. So good for him. And then Chastity Callahan says she just bought 3 tins from a local B&M today. And Chastity, good for you. That's exactly what you got to do. Buy from local B&Ms and the small retailers. You might pay slightly more, but you're going to be helping the industry as a whole.
Yes. It's not enough to simply buy material from the place that sells it the cheapest. There are reasons why the large retail online companies are able to sell pipe tobacco at a very low rate. They have the volume. They have a massive amount of volume, and that's not the only reason. But if you're not charging at least 30% increase on a tin of pipe tobacco, if you're a small brick and mortar company or an online business such as what we were and hope to be again, then you're not making enough money to make it worthwhile. So just because you have to pay another dollar from a smaller company, just do it. I mean, there's no point in trying to, if we don't support one another, then there won't be an industry left. If we're going to be trying to pinch pennies, going to different websites, pinching pennies, well, I'm going to buy from this person because their tin of tobacco is a nickel cheaper. No, buy from people who you want to support. You're going to get the same tin from this guy that you would from that guy. You might get the same pipe, but, just support the people who you are attracted to, who you want to succeed in business. Because if it were not for the loyal customer base that we had when we were in business, I would have shut the pipe cottage down a long time before we moved. But it was growing. It was growing exponentially every month. Why? Because we had a message that we wanted to get across. This industry matters, and the people who are in this industry care about you as the customer. They genuinely care about you as the customer. That cannot be said for every retail experience that a person has in the United States.
Well, in addition, when you go to your local B&M, you get a chance to socialize with other people in this industry and in this hobby. I'm not even sure you'd call it a hobby. It's a lifestyle in a lot of ways. And you and I before the show were talking about the upcoming pipe show in Columbus, Ohio here. That thank goodness you're going to be at. I hope to meet you in person. But do you think events like that are also important to the industry? Get out and meet people and socialize and bring it more into your daily life.
Yes, well, I will readily admit that the Ohio Pipe Show in just 2 weeks actually is the first pipe show that I will have ever been to.
Yeah, same here.
I've never experienced one, so I'm looking forward to it. But I know that these pipe shows were a tradition long before I came along, and I understand the importance of them. And again, I'll mention Rick Newcomb. I was reading through a couple of his books, and I'm looking at them now. I was reading through a couple of his books that he graciously sent to me, and he explains the importance of pipe shows and the conviviality, the friendships that are developed there. So I would like to see more of these shows. I would like to see more local pipe clubs. I visited J.M. Boswell's pipe shops in Pennsylvania last month. I went to his Chambersburg store, beautiful store. I'm sure most everybody who is listening now knows about that store. But I think perhaps less people know about his Alexandria, Pennsylvania store, which is where he currently makes his pipes, and that's where he is most of the time. And so it's about an hour and a half drive from Chambersburg, and so I wanted to meet Mr. Boswell. So I drove an extra hour and a half to meet him in his Alexandria location.
Wow.
And when I walked in, there was a collection of people in the smoking lounge enjoying one another's company, and it's clear that they all knew one another and that they were regulars. But when I was talking to Mr. Boswell, one question that I asked him was there a pipe smoking community here in this part of Pennsylvania when you arrived? He said no. He said, I made one.
Wow, yeah.
He said, I introduced people to pipe smoking. I created a community here with this store. That's the power of a beautifully crafted brick and mortar pipe shop. It has the power to not only introduce people to this hobby, this lifestyle, but it has the power to create new friendships. These are small pipe shows, if you want to think about it like that. You have your own individual club. You can share experiences with one another, what pipes you enjoy, what blends you enjoy. I have been to several brick and mortar stores in this country, and I have never once had a bad experience in any of them. Every experience, I remember so many details of the conversations I had. I can even tell you the pipe I was smoking when I visited them, the blends I had when I visited them. Why? Because those were very special moments in my life. And that's why I wanted to start the Pipe Cottage with the ultimate objective of starting a brick and mortar store, because I love that environment. I didn't do it because I had to do it to make a living. I want this to work so that I can do my small part in preserving an important American tradition.
Right. And I love the fact that you talk about preserving tradition, because that's a big part of it. You know, I'm a member of a couple of different fraternities, we'll say, that span back a few hundred years. And, in recent years, they've sort of lost the brotherhood, the mystique that they had at one point, partially because of, modern society, technology. They have to compete with Facebook. People would rather sit at home watching Netflix and flipping through Facebook than going out and building a true relationship with like-minded people. With pipes and, premium tobacco, so cigars in much the same way, there's a community that builds up, and you get to know these people, and they get to know you, and the types of people who are drawn to this lifestyle, to this hobby, are it's just incredible. And I think a lot of people just don't understand that.
Yes, that's the truth. And well, most modern people, anyway, whether we're talking about Americans or otherwise, do not understand the importance of local community.
Mm-hmm.
They've been separated from it by the screen, by machines, the ability to go wherever you want to go in a short amount of time. You know a lot about a person who you admire on YouTube, but you know nothing about the guy who lives in the house next door.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lack of community and support for the local community. So it's one of the many problems of modern man.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So we've been going for about an hour now. What is an area that you would like to just a piece of advice that you would like to give to people who love this hobby, love this community, and just want to get deeper into it? Would it be go to more brick and mortars? Would it be, you mentioned stocking up, buying as much as you can, supporting the industry? What else would you like to add?
Well, I would of course say that it's important to support the tobacco shops and so forth. But perhaps more than that, it's important to realize why you're smoking a pipe in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing it? Be able to come up with an explanation that you can offer other people who ask you about pipes and pipe smoking. Oftentimes, I encounter people who, if you're out in public, they want to know why you do this, and they'll sometimes talk about the grandfather, somebody in their family who smoked a pipe. And it's a nostalgic part of American history. When people see a person smoking a pipe, it elicits a certain memory or a certain image. And so what I've tried to tell people on my YouTube channel, at least, is always be ready to give a defense for why you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And explain the importance of the pipe to your life, not simply as a hobby, but as a complement to your lifestyle and your personality.
Yeah, that's amazing. I couldn't agree more. We actually have a lot of people viewing, and everybody in here. Yeah, Nick Papa Giorgio says he wants to show his support. Steve from Groomwood Hollow says that he loves your story and can't wait to see more. I got to ask, aside from opening your store in potentially in Tennessee in the hopefully near future, what's the long-term goal for the Pipe Cottage? Do you want to see a single location that you can just enjoy your time in? Do you want to see something that grows as big as potentially smoking pipes? Or what's your end goal?
My end goal is simply to have a very fine pipe shop that I can enjoy. I can sell product, but also have a place where people can come and we can get to know one another.
Mm-hmm.
A hub, if you will, a local hub, a destination point for people who are interested in the hobby. I have no ambition of becoming anything remotely similar to smoking pipes or tobacco pipes. I buy things from both of those companies,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciate both of them. But that's not the business model that I'm following.
Right.
If I would like to see this happen, I would like to be 50 years old, 60, 70 years old, however long the Lord allows me to remain here.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to look back and say, thank God for the opportunity that I had to get to know so many wonderful people. People who walk through the doors of my shop, people who not only purchased from us, but spent time with me. Spent time. We are too fast-paced in this country and in this world now. People need to just slow down and spend time with one another, especially if they have something in common. And pipe smokers have far more in common than simply pipe smoking. I can talk all day long with people in a pipe lounge, a smoking lounge, and we don't have to talk about politics one time. I mean, it doesn't come up. We don't have to, because if you have a certain degree of class, that's really not necessary unless you're in a situation where it is. And so, you know what I'm saying. So that's what I would like to see happen. I would like the pipe cottage to be a part of my lifelong achievements.
Well, it's already a massive achievement. I mean, the following that you have is incredible. And I have a question, and I just thought of this, and I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but I still have to ask. Have you considered possibly crowdsourcing some funding to expedite the development of the pipe cottage in Tennessee?
No.
I knew that would be the answer. I knew you'd say it. I had to ask, though.
I have not. Do not ask people for money. I make money.
There you go. Exactly.
And it would be much easier to make money if the government would leave us alone.
Right.
The only reason I am not currently making money through the pipe cottage and building that business and following the dream of building that B&M store is because of government.
Right,
That's
absolutely.
That's what's causing the problem. Because I will not do business if it's not done with integrity. And given the government the names, addresses, phone numbers, product purchases of every person who's ever bought from us, giving that to a government entity without knowing anything what they're going to do with that information, that is not integrity.
Right. The data they're requesting is ridiculous.
So I'm not going to do it. And so, no, I'm not asking people for money. I'm not doing any sort of funding program.
I knew you'd say it, but I had to ask. So if I can steal a few more minutes of your time, we actually have some personal questions, not really personal in this hobby, that I think people would really love to learn more about some of your pipe smoking preferences. For instance, some time ago in our conversation, Papa Joe on YouTube asked, what's your favorite blend? What do you like to smoke the most?
Beyond the shadow of a doubt, it's my Mixture 965 Phil Dunhill, now Peterson blend.
Yeah.
That blend was the first English I ever tried, and it is still my favorite English to this day, and for good reason. And so that's the short answer to that question.
No, that is a great blend. Before I get to the next one, Nick Papagiorgio says he really appreciates you taking a stand against the man, and you have the highest caliber of character. So I couldn't agree more. That's incredible. What is your favorite? What's your favorite pipe material? So I love a meerschaum pipe because I like the history of the material itself. I like the idea that it's going to outlive me. I like the idea that my great-grandchildren can smoke the same pipe that I'm smoking right now. Not right now, but that I have in my collection. What's your favorite pipe material and style?
Well, I prefer a straight stem pipe for the most part. I have bent stem pipes, but I often prefer straight. And contrary to what many people say, I am able to clench a straight pipe much better than I am a bent pipe. And I have meerschaum, briar, and call. I cannot say that either one is better than the other. I use all in my rotation, but I do not use. I do not dedicate particular pipes to particular blends. When I first started in this hobby, I was so afraid of putting an English blend in a bowl that previously had an aromatic in it. I don't even care about all that anymore. What I do is I'll just go pick a pipe that suits me at a particular time, and I will fill it with a particular tobacco that suits my interest at that point. There's no point making it a science. I mean, pipe smoking is an art, if anything else. We don't need to get too particular and scientific about that.
Right. And I would say smoke what you love and smoke how you love to smoke it. In fact, one of my favorite pipes is a meerschaum pipe. It was probably my second pipe I ever bought. So just about 20 years ago, I bought this meerschaum pipe. I got it was ghost white. Now it's just this beautiful chocolate brown. And just little by little over the years, it's ghosted just a tiny bit. And I just love to pick up this pipe every once in a while and just smell the meerschaum. because it has just tiny little bits of aroma from all the different blends it's had in it over the years, and I love that. So I do the same thing. I don't save specific pipes for specific types of blends. So tonight I'm actually smoking the new Sunberry. I just got this in the mail today. What's your feeling on the small batch? So C&D does small batches at least once a month, and it's a great marketing tactic. I mean, I can't fault them there. What's your feeling on all these small batches?
Well, you've asked a question that
Is that a big...
is very controversial. A lot of people have different opinions on that. I have tried to sample as many of those small batch blends as I can. Mm-hmm. And I will say that some of them are excellent and superior tobaccos. But, you know, this is arbitrary. I mean, I can like one blend that somebody else absolutely despises. Mm-hmm. But they do it simply for marketing. I mean, that's obvious. Anybody who has any background in marketing knows that this is a marketing initiative. Mm-hmm. But it's smart. It's a smart initiative. I mean, look at how quick that particular 10 you just held up sold out.
Oh, yeah, there were 15. And this is number 14505 out of 15,000. It sold out the night it was released.
Yes. But having said that, Carolina Red Flake is my favorite small batch release that I've had from Cornell and Deal. Mm-hmm. It is genuinely a very superior Red Virginian. But I can taste many of those same notes in Wessex Red Virginia Flake, and so it's not. I think people are making the mistake when you think that this is the only representation of this particular tobacco genre that we can buy that is this good. There are other Red Virginia blends that are just as good, sometimes even better than Carolina Red Flake, even though I do like that blend. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, buy as much as you can. I mean, it's fun. I mean, I'll say the small batch releases are interesting and they're entertaining, right, and it's a fun part of the hobby. It's always fun to try something new and different. So I will not fault Cornell and Deal for releasing their small batches. They're smart. They're very smart people when it comes to this.
Absolutely. Look, I think the we'll say downfall of McClelland sort of helped Cornell and Deal with these small batches. People get the FOMO. They're like, oh, this is going to be the next Frog Morton. I'll never see it again. I got to buy 20 tins of this because it'll never come out again.
Yes. Well, I was obviously not in business before McClelland shut down in 2019. Mm-hmm. But if you mentioned McClelland, that's another sad story. Mm-hmm. I tend to believe that McClelland went out of business for several reasons that they mentioned in the early 2019, of course. But I have to believe that the increased uncertainty about government intrusion into the industry had a lot to do with it. If I were in their shoes and I had made a good career out of tobacco and I was at the point where I had made my contribution to the industry, to the hobby, mm-hmm, I probably would consider just not even worrying about being in the business anymore if I had to deal with the government.
Right.
But if everybody does that, there won't be an industry anymore.
You're absolutely right.
So there has to be a way around this. There has to be a way around it. So yeah, the small batch stuff is fun. McClelland tobaccos, I enjoy them very well, but there are other tobaccos that I enjoy just as well, if not more, than many things that McClelland produced. But again, this is all arbitrary. When one person's taste is far different from that of another person.
Oh, you're totally right. My local B&M, they actually have several of their own blends. They'll buy different blending materials and make their own blends that are exclusive to them. If the Pipe Cottage is up and running, hopefully again in the near future, do you have any future plans to come out with any Pipe Cottage exclusive blends? And if so, can I get some samples ahead of time? Because I'll put your name out there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, that is that's a new interest of mine that I'm exploring more, and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's not easy to come up with tobacco blends that satisfy a broad range of people. Now, of course, I can come up with something that is interesting to me, but if it's absolutely horrible to 90% of the people who smoke pipes, then there's no point in putting it on the market.
Fair point.
And so I have a great deal of respect for GLPs,
Right.
Even John David Cole at the Country Squire,
Mm-hmm.
the people at Mylands in Roanoke, Virginia, at all of the, I mean, Watch City Cigar out of Massachusetts. There's so many different people in this country who are, well, I say that, there's not really that many. There's probably only a handful that are really, really good and recognized as being good when it comes to blending quality pipe tobacco. But yes, sir, to answer the question, I would love to be able to produce some quality blends, but that takes time. I mean, J.M. Boswell took, I think, 3 or 4 years to develop Northwoods,
Sure.
which many people compare to Frogmort now. But Northwoods is good in and of its own right. You don't have to compare that to anything else.
Yeah, we have several people in the comments right now saying that they would love to see a Pipe Cottage exclusive blend. So, look, like we said earlier, your following is incredible. And the second you can get up and running again, I mean, you have a built-in customer base.
Well, I appreciate that loyalty. All the people, every person who ever bought from us was an extremely refined gentleman or lady.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to make it appear that only men smoke pipes. I mean, we had several women who ordered from us, and they were always just the most pleasant people to deal with. And I can't think of a more pleasant retail business to be in than pipes and pipe tobacco, because everybody wants to help everybody else. Sometimes you'll get an ugly individual who wants to act a little rude, but I see that in comments on YouTube videos and that sort of thing every now and then. But for the most part, people are extraordinarily nice, and I just love the people. I love the people in this business, and it saddens me that we are not able to open the Pipe Cottage as soon as we wanted to. And so I'm very, very disappointed about that. But we are going to press forward and figure out a way to make it happen.
Well, look, Alan, I can't wait to learn more about your story as it develops and see where this grows. I think everybody here agrees. Chastity Callahan here says that she lives in Tennessee, and as soon as you open, she's going to frequent your the Pipe Cottage very often. Again, I have a feeling that given the following that you have, the Pipe Cottage B&M will likely be one of those sort of pilgrimage places that people go to. So that's going to be incredible. In the meantime, you did say that you're going to go to the Columbus Pipe Show on August 19th and 20th. You're going to be there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I will be there from Friday through Sunday morning. That
is amazing. So hopefully I'll see you there. This is going to be my first pipe show as well. But we've been going for a while. I don't want to keep you all night. Dr. Alan Harrelson, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This is incredible getting to speak with you. This is actually a real honor for me.
Well, sir, it's a great privilege for me as well, West, and I'm so glad that you reached out and were willing to spend some time with me this evening.
Absolutely. And I hope to speak with you again soon. So, again, hopefully on the 19th, we'll get to meet up.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, everybody, thanks for joining. Dr. Alan Harrelson. Look, everybody, if you want to support the pipe industry, the first place you can start is not only buying from your B&M, but supporting pipe channels here on YouTube. As a lot of us know, it is getting a lot harder to find premium tobacco channels, whether it's cigar or pipe tobacco on YouTube. There's shadow blocks. There's all kinds of things happening behind the scenes that make these channels harder to find. So the first thing you can do is you can follow the Pipe Cottage on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You like those pages, you subscribe, and you share them out, because that will help the algorithm. You need to subscribe, and you need to hit the little bell icon that says you want all notifications. Otherwise, you won't get any notifications about these channels. simply because of the subject matter. So again, follow the Pipe Cottage, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Are you anyplace else on social?
No, that's it for now. But that's enough for now, as a matter of fact.
I don't picture you as a TikTok guy. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, that is not going to happen.
All right. Well, Dr. Alan Harrelson, thank you so much for joining us. Man, I can't thank you enough. It's amazing.
Glad to be here, sir.
All right, everybody, we will see you next time. Thanks.
In your birthday. And I have seen the world pristine, funk you up in the bushes, funk you down in the trees. Now look around, all the frowns, the yellow, the white, the red, and the brown. And keep in mind, it never costs a dime, cause funkin' is free, I remember the time. Now look today, the streets are gray, time to take it back to yesterday. Funkin' in the neighborhood, I felt the fool cause the funk was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood. Funkin' up the neighborhood. I felt full cause the funkin' was good. Funk you in the city, funk you up in the woods. Funkin' up the neighborhood.